10 strange patterns that predict human behavior. What if I told you that right now, before you've made a single decision today, someone could already predict what you're going to do next? Not a psychic, not a mystic, a psychologist with data. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You are not nearly as unpredictable as you think you are. Your brain runs on patterns hidden, invisible, deeply wired patterns that repeat themselves over and over throughout your life. And once you know what those patterns are, you can read people. You can read yourself. You can finally understand why you and everyone around you keep doing the same things, making the same choices, falling into the same traps. Today, we're going to break down 10 of the strangest, most fascinating patterns that behavioral scientists have discovered, patterns that predict human behavior with alarming accuracy. By the end of this video, you're never going to see people the same way again. Pattern 1. The doorway effect. Have you ever walked into a room and completely forgotten why you went there? You're not losing your mind. You're experiencing what psychologists call the doorway effect, and it's one of the most reliably predicted behaviors in all of cognitive science. Research from the University of Notre Dame found that simply passing through a doorway acts as an event boundary in your memory. Your brain files away the previous room as a closed chapter and opens a new file, effectively wiping your short-term working memory clean. Here's what makes this strange. It happens even in virtual environments. In a computer simulation, walking through a virtual doorway causes the same memory reset. Your brain doesn't just respond to physical space. It responds to the architecture of context. A new environment equals a new mental state. Every time. Pattern 2. The pratfall effect. Counterintuitively, the more competent someone seems, the more you will like them when they make a mistake. Psychologist Elliot Aronson discovered this in 1966. He called it the pratfall effect. When a highly competent person blunders, spills coffee, mispronounces a word, stumbles on stage, people don't think less of them. They think more of them. Why? Because vulnerability makes people real. Perfection creates psychological distance. A small mistake collapses that distance instantly. But here's the dark side. If you are already perceived as low competence, a mistake makes you less likable. The pratfall effect only works upward. The next time someone impressive makes a small public blunder and you suddenly feel warmer toward them, you're not making a free choice. You're running pattern 2. Pattern 3. The Baader-Meinhof phenomenon. You learn a new word, and then suddenly you hear it everywhere. You buy a red car, and now you see red cars on every road. This is the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, also called frequency illusion, and your brain is generating it on demand, every day, without your permission. Here's what's actually happening. Your brain has a filter system called the reticular activating system, or RAS. When you encounter something new and meaningful, your RAS flags it as important. Then it begins actively scanning your environment for more of it and highlights every match. The thing was always there. You just couldn't see it before. Tell someone a new piece of information in the morning, something they've never thought about, and by evening, they will have coincidentally noticed it at least twice. They'll think it's fate. It's neuroscience. Pattern 4. The default effect. Most people will choose whatever option requires the least action to select. This is the default effect. One of the most powerful and under-discussed behavioral patterns in existence. And governments, corporations, and designers use it to control what you do every single day. When organ donation programs switched from opt-in to opt-out, simply making donation, the default consent rates jumped from under 20% to over 90% in some countries. Same people, same choice, different default. Your brain is lazy not as an insult, but by design. Cognitive effort is metabolically expensive. Your brain defaults to the path of least resistance whenever possible. Change the default option in any setting, and you will change the majority behavior without changing a single person's mind. Pattern 5. The Ben Franklin effect. Benjamin Franklin had a political rival who hated him. So Franklin asked that rival for a favor to borrow a rare book from his library. The rival sent the book. Franklin returned it with a note of thanks. And from that day forward, the rival became one of Franklin's closest allies. This is the Ben Franklin effect. When you do someone a favor, you don't just help them, You start to like them more. Why? Because your brain hates contradiction. If you help someone, your unconscious mind reasons, I must like them, otherwise why would I help them? It rewires your attitude to match your behavior. Ask someone who dislikes you to do you a small, easy favor. Their brain will begin to justify having helped you, and they will like you more within days. Pattern 6. The spotlight effect. You think everyone is watching you, judging your outfit, noticing your mistake, analyzing your voice. They're not. This is the spotlight effect. The universal human tendency to dramatically overestimate how much other people notice us. Thomas Gilovich at Cornell had students wear an embarrassing t-shirt and walk into a room. Students predicted about 50% of people would notice. The real number, less than 25%. Why does this happen? Because you are the center of your own world. Your experience is vivid to you, so you assume it must be vivid to others. But other people are the center of their world. They're too busy watching themselves to watch you. The moment someone feels embarrassed or judged in public, their behavior changes dramatically based entirely on a threat that exists almost entirely in their own mind. Pattern 7. The IKEA effect. You built it. You love it, even if it's ugly. This is the IKEA effect, the cognitive bias that makes you place disproportionately high value on things you helped create, regardless of their objective quality. Michael Norton at Harvard found that people who assembled IKEA furniture were willing to pay significantly more for the same product than people who had not assembled it. They had invested labor, and their brain converted that labor into love. It doesn't stop at furniture. It applies to your ideas, your projects, your relationships, your beliefs. If you built it, your brain is biased toward it. Guaranteed. Anyone who has invested significant time or effort in a project will overvalue it relative to outside observers and will resist feedback that contradicts their inflated assessment. Pattern 8. The contrast effect. Your brain doesn't measure things in absolute terms. It measures everything in contrast to what came before it. This is the contrast effect, and once you see it operating, you'll notice it everywhere. Real estate agents use it. Show the worst house first, the mediocre house second, and the one they actually want to sell third. It will seem spectacular even if it's ordinary. Salary negotiators use it anchor high, so the concession feels like a gift. The actual number never changes, only the reference point does. Present any option after an extreme, especially a negative extreme, and it will be rated more favorably than if presented alone. You're not judging the option. You're judging the gap. Pattern 9. Escalation of commitment. You've already put too much in, so you keep going. Not because it's rational, because your brain cannot tolerate the feeling that all that effort was wasted. This is escalation of commitment, also called the sunk cost fallacy, and it is responsible for ruined businesses, broken relationships, failed wars, and billions of dollars lost every year, the money you already spent. Gone. It doesn't change the future. But your brain treats past investment as a reason to keep investing, because walking away feels like admitting defeat. Studies on Vietnam-era military decisions showed that as American casualties rose, the pressure to continue the war increased not because more troops made strategic sense, but because the losses already suffered made retreat psychologically unbearable. The longer someone has invested in a failing course of action without a clear exit, the harder it becomes for them to leave, and the more they will justify continued investment. Every time. Pattern 10. The projection bias. When you're hungry, you assume you'll always be hungry. When you're in love, you assume you'll always feel this way. When you're angry, you can't imagine ever being calm. This is projection bias. The deeply wired tendency to assume your current emotional and physical state will persist indefinitely into the future. Economists at Berkeley found that car buyers were significantly more likely to purchase four-wheel drive vehicles on snowy days, even when analyzing cars they wouldn't receive for months. They couldn't emotionally separate today's weather from future climate. Your current self cannot accurately simulate your future self's emotional reality. It assumes too much similarity. Any decision made at emotional peak excitement, fear, hunger, anger will systematically mispredict future satisfaction. Every single time. So, here's the question you should be sitting with right now. If all of these patterns predict your behavior, the doorways you walk through, the defaults you accept, The sunk costs you can't let go of. Where exactly is the free will? Here's what the research actually suggests. Awareness doesn't eliminate these patterns. They're too deep, too efficient, too wired in. But awareness changes your relationship to them. When you catch yourself escalating commitment to a failing project, you can pause. When you feel certain that your hungry, angry, or excited state will last forever, you can remind yourself this is projection bias talking. When you notice you're judging something in contrast to what came before it, you can ask, would I make the same judgment in isolation? You can't beat your brain, but you can learn to see it. And seeing it even a second before it acts is everything. I want you to do something before you close this video. Pick one of those 10 patterns, the one that felt most uncomfortably accurate, and write it in the comments below. Not because it will fix anything, but because naming the pattern is the first step to seeing it when it runs. If this video changed how you see yourself, even slightly share it with one person in your life, because they're running these patterns too, and they probably don't know it. Subscribe to Mind Lies, because every week, we pull back the curtain on the hidden mechanics of the human mind. The next video we're releasing, it's going to make you seriously question every free choice you've ever made. See you there.